Hey, what's going on, YouTube? This is your girl, KD. I know it's been a minute since I made a video, but here I am. And today we're going to discuss a certain individual. And by the picture, we know of whom we speak. And this is our little, this picture is, I intend to make it our little dog whistle. But anyway. In the last video that I made, Why I Do What I Do, I used a phrase. But I used this phrase in the wrong context. I used the phrase, a war of attrition. Okay? But like I said, I used this phrase in the wrong context. It was incorrect. So right now, I will give you the basic definition of the phrase war of attrition or attrition warfare. Attrition warfare is a military strategy consisting of belligerent attempts to win a war by wearing down the enemy to the point of collapse through continuous losses in personnel and material. The war will usually be won by the side with greater resources. I'll read that to you one more time. Attrition warfare is a military strategy consisting of belligerent attempts to win a war by wearing down the enemy to the point of collapse through continuous losses in personnel and material. The war will usually be won by the side with greater such resources. Now, even though I used the phrase in the wrong context in the last video, the actual definition of it is accurate to the experience of Black people in this country. About a week ago, I was listening to a panel upon which a certain individual was a part of that panel. And this individual were going over their usual talking points. And there were a couple of things actually said that I took issue with. And I've always taken issue with these talking points. And the issue came back around to respecting Black men and things of that nature. And, you know, this individual went upon their usual path and was like, basically, and I'm paraphrasing this is not verbatim, that Black men aren't doing anything worthy of respect. And until they can stop being dominated by another group of men, they are not going to receive or don't deserve to receive the respect of the collective of Black women. And I spoke about this concept in a video I did months ago, Money, Power, Respect. So you can almost think of this as a continuation of that thought. That the assertion is basically this in a nutshell. Black women, or this is what's being asserted, Black women don't need, not obligated, to show any general respect or support or anything else to the men to which she belongs or says she belongs, because these men long ago were conquered by another group. And to this day, we are still living underneath the system, the oppressive system that was created by that group. And because Black men have not, as of yet, overturned this system, they are not worthy of respect and do not need to look for any form of cooperation from their women until this is done. How does war of attrition play into this? Well, because this is what we're in, right? A series of attempts made to wear down an enemy until their will to fight and their ability to fight is collapsed. Isn't that what the system of white supremacy is designed to do for black men specifically and black people in general in this country? Isn't that what it's designed to do? This is a war of attrition because it is a war. Yes, it is a war. And it is a war where two sides do not meet each other in the field of battle. And the reason why we can't meet each other in the field of battle is because black people don't have a military. We are not a sovereign nation within a nation. We are Americans. We are Americans. We've been assimilated into the entire system. Okay? We have neither killed our oppressor nor have we separated ourselves from the oppressor. So therefore, we are bound by it because we use the same currency. We are underneath the same laws. We are subject to everything that every other American is subject to, with the added issue that there is actual policy made against black people. There is policy made that actually makes life much more difficult for us. And I'm not going to go into the details of that. That can be another video or something. But like I said, this is a war of attrition. And this individual wants black men to win such a war. But such a war is usually won by the entity with more resources. Who has more resources? The United States of America as a whole, or black people? Who has the guns? Who has the military might? Who has the backing of the policy and the government and the power? But this individual wants black men to somehow rise above this entire system, come out on top. I don't think this individual knows what she's asking, the logistics of what's being asked. Black men are being asked to win a war with a severe disadvantage. First of all, we are not organized enough as a people to do this. And black women are basically saying they're not going to help. So that's about roughly half the black population, and is rinse their hands of it. They're not going to do it. I'm not even going to support you. I don't even owe you cursory respect. Because you're quote unquote dominated by another group of men. Right? So you go out and you reconquer. But to reconquer, to rise out of this situation and basically build another civilization on top of it, you have to raise it to the ground and then build on its ashes. That is a war, and not necessarily a war of attrition. We're talking about actual bloodshed here, is what we're talking about, a revolution. We're basically talking about kicking off a civil war and a race war. One that Black people are ill prepared to win. We do not have access to resources. We do not have access to guns in the abundance with which we would need them. And we don't have the general cooperation of the women. You see? Don't have it. My question is, who's really dominated, the men or the women? Because I asked a few questions in the chat room to this individual, and she was extremely condescending and rude, might I add, which pissed me off to the highest level of pistivity, because I don't like being condescended to, especially by individuals who are not smarter than me. And there are individuals smarter than me. I have ran into them, and they don't even talk in a condescending way to me. But she was quite condescending, quite looking down her nose whenever I asked very simple questions, because I think she thought that I was looking to her for answers. That's almost laughable. I was actually asking her questions in order to ascertain her viewpoint on certain things. But my question is, who is actually dominated here? Because I think all of us have been conquered. We were conquered as a group. That's first. Okay? But the women have undergone a severe level of subversion. Okay? A severe level of subversion. We have been conditioned against our men by the very government that we want, supposedly, we want our men to go and conquer. Supposedly, we want that. But we have adopted into that system. We have allowed it to replace our men for us. We rely on it for housing, for our sustenance, for food, for, jobs, all of that. We rely on that, right? So the women have actually undergone a severe amount of subversion because we are women, and it is more valuable that we are subverted because we will raise our children that way. Okay. And I'll give you an example of the subversion and how successful it is. In Texas, um, 17 Black women were elected as judges. 17 of them. That's a lot. If we were a organized group, that little fact would be so freaking awesome. You know why? Because that would mean potentially that the sentencing that Black men usually get would be more in line with normal sentencings, because we know that black men disproportionately will receive tougher, stiffer sentences and steeper charges for the same things that other groups of men are also convicted for. So we know that in the judicial system, what will happen is something that's a misdemeanor, they'll look for a way to make it a felony for a black man. You know, if he has a certain amount of drugs on his possession, instead of it being like a personal thing, like he has this amount because he's a user or whatever, they'll try to see if they can make it where it's intent to distribute, which would be a felony because he's a drug dealer. You see? And if we were organized, if black women had race loyalty as a whole, if they identified with their man, if they had empathy for their men, that would be a power move. Power move. Because now these judges who are black women with the power to sentence in a way that is either unfair or fair to what's in front of them would be able to mitigate some of that and say, you know what, this is a young man. He has a minor offense. Instead of throwing a book at this young man, let's actually see if we can rehabilitate him. I'm going to sentence him to, a group home, whatever, instead of doing hard jail time, I'll sentence him to something else and allow him an opportunity to rehabilitate, because I don't want our black men being coming through the revolving door of the justice system, because the recidivism rate is extremely high for black men, and there's a reason for that, and I'm not going to get into it. But I will say this, the reason is not because all the black men who go in there are guilty of sin and they're just incorrigible criminals. It's not why. That's not why the recidivism rate is so high. Okay? But because we know that black women are so subverted, we know that this is not a victory for black people. This is not going to be used as a way to help mitigate the damage that black men go through when they come through the court system. And this is why these women were elected. This is why they are elected in a system that is built against black men, because they're going to help it. That's the sad truth and reality. They're going to help the system, or else you don't get elected. You don't get elected if I know you're going to go against it. We've got a system in place here, and you're going to play your part. This is how you know the subversion is real, because they know these are the real mammies and handmaidens, because they help white supremacy. I would be very surprised. Very surprised. I would be delightfully surprised, but very surprised if it played out any differently than that in that county. I would be very surprised, because I just don't have any faith, because black women don't see themselves as part and parcel of the group. They see themselves as very separate from black men. They see themselves separately. They see themselves as women first, black whenever. You see? So to expect our men to win a war of attrition in one generation, one lifetime, before they can get your respect is asinine. It's one of the most ridiculous assertions that I have ever had the displeasure of listening to. And since you're not going to help the war effort, what good are you? What purpose do you serve? To tell them that they're dominated every 5 seconds? Is that supposed to be a vote of confidence, or I'm not sure. Because you're supposed to speak greatness to your men. Other groups of women don't do this shit. You want to know how white people were able to conquer the way in which they did? Because their women helped them. The KKK would not have been as powerful nor as potent had it not been for the dedication of the women. It was the women who were recruiting other women. They were putting their sweat equity into something that they believed in. That was fucked up, because the fucking KKK. But this is why that organization still exists, because their women are 110% behind that shit. The female chapters of the KKK, if you've read any books or watched any documentaries about it, they all say the same thing. We would not have been anything without our women. Our women were the backbone of the white Aryan nation groups and KKK groups. And how do you think white supremacy persists? They're raising them. White supremacy is quite literally born from the wombs of white women. But they know how to help their men even when they're doing fucked up shit. Now that was fucked up, but they helped them. They believed in it. They bought into it. They wanted to be part of it. They knew that it could not be successful without them. And so they joined in, and they were 10 toes down. But we as black women can't seem to understand the value of being 10 toes down with our men and their fight, which is a righteous fight. The fight is just and is righteous. What is more righteous than fighting for your very freedom? What could be more righteous than that? But you have no concern. Not interested. I don't want to respect you until you fight, but you're not helping the war effort though. You want them to go to war, but not gonna help. But you do want the spoils of war after, you know what I'm saying? Like old boy said in Lord of the Rings, and yes, I'm a nerd, when IBMOR was talking to Grima Wormtongue and realized that Grima was working with Saruman. He said, what was the promised price? When all the men are dead, you would take your share of the treasure? That's what you want. What was the promised price? What the white man promised you? When all the men are dead, you could take your share of the treasure? I'm out.